This day is brought to you by Quince, where you can find luxury, affordable wardrobe staples that'll carry you through the fall season. And not just you, but me, where I recently snagged a new pair of khakis. And not just you, not just me, but the whole This Day team. I have got everyone here hooked. Nikki scored a flow knit full zip hoodie, which is a great sweatshirt for transition to the fall. She says it is smooth to the touch and that she is wearing it all the time, which I can attest to because I have seen her wearing it a number of times during our tapings. Kelly texted me that she has a navy blue button-down dress that has, wait for it, it has pockets. She says that people have been asking her nonstop where she got it. And the answer, of course, is she got it at Quince. Find all of your fall staples at Quince right now. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday. This day is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Hello and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, fall of 1964, it's the presidential election, which is winding down, and it is a fascinating race featuring candidates like Lyndon B Johnson and Barry Goldwater and Dizzy Gillespie. You want to guess which of those candidates we are devoting this episode to? That's right. We are going to talk about the famous jazz trumpeter who threw his hat in the ring as a candidate for the 1964 presidential election. Now, did this all start out as a bit of a joke or a publicity stunt? Kinda. But did it end up with thousands of people voting for him and signing petitions and a proper platform and a months-long effort with merch and swag and all the usual trappings of a presidential campaign? Yeah, it kind of did that as well. So I really, really love this story. I love Dizzy Gillespie. Let's get into it. Dizzy for president. Here, as always, Nicole Hammer of Vanderbilt and Kelly Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
This is such a wonderful story, and I know we have a lot of listeners who are maybe on the younger side or don't know, too much about U.S. presidential history, but Dizzy Gillespie did not win. He did not become.
Correct. I've written a lot about the 1964 election because of Barry Goldwater's run,
Right, so
and I can't say that Dizzy's name has ever come up, but
Fair
this
enough.
is still it's a great story.
I will say that I found out about this because I was watching that really excellent, though quite long, documentary, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, which was all about CIA and the kind of like U.S. music culture and musicians, particularly in Africa, to both spread U.S. cultural imperialism and overthrow some governments. And a lot of jazz musicians were implicated in that. And there was just a little snippet in there that showed, it was like a 15-second moment of like a clip of Dizzy Gillespie talking about being a candidate for president. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And then I went down the rabbit hole, and here we are doing the episode. So people may not have known that Dizzy Gillespie ran for president. People may not know that much about Dizzy Gillespie himself. So Kelly, tell us, who is Dizzy Gillespie?
Well, John Burks Gillespie. I was like, wait, that's his real name? Yes, John Burks Gillespie is from Cheraw, North Carolina. He's actually one of 9 children. His father was like a local band leader. And so if you can imagine, if you're one of 9 children and your father teaches band, that everybody's going to learn an instrument. He was playing piano by like age 4. He taught himself how to play the trumpet by age 12. People know him for his trumpet, certainly, but just him being a music composer. And I think his most iconic look is sort of like those, horn-rimmed glasses, and the way he played the trumpet. He would blow out his cheeks so big in a way that was almost unreal. I was like, there's no way. Because when his cheeks went back regular, I was like, where are you getting all of his extra skin.
Where are you hiding those?
Yeah, where are you hiding those jaws? Like, it's crazy. But he was just a fantastic musician and entertainer, and remains, I would say, one of the GOATs in terms of jazz. Like, you think of Dizzy Gillespie, you think of Miles Davis, you think of,
Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong. Yeah. And so in our house, he's a big deal. My son plays the trumpet. My husband plays the trumpet. Yeah. So
let me ask you this question then, because I would imagine that one of the sort of banes of trumpet teachers is that people see pictures of one of the best trumpeters of all time with these puffed out cheeks, and they're like, Dizzy did that, but you don't get to do that, right?
No. And when my son was learning how to play the trumpet too, that's tough. Those early learning moments are a little tough, but and he has recital coming up soon. I'm very excited. But anyways, I digress. Trumpet is like, I don't know, it's sort of iconic when you think about what it means to listen to jazz music and hear this very distinct sound. That is what Dizzy Gillespie did for music.
And he was a real entertainer. I mean, he was, very funny, a
comedian.
Sort of comedian, in many senses. And it's funny, I don't know a ton about jazz, but I know a decent amount. And I kind of think I just came to understand Dizzy as one of the greats as a musician, and I didn't really understand that he was also just this incredible personality, which I think is backwards. I think most people sort of just knew him and understood him as a sort of over-the-top personality, and then it was like, oh, this guy who's really, really funny and on TV all the time and telling jokes, he also happens to be really, really good. But I think there's a little tension there. I think some people were like, oh, you're not very serious. I think jazz.
Well, him and Louis Armstrong, I think they both had those sort of very popular demeanor, except for Miles Davis. He kind of
totally.
But
no, I mean, jazz is full of, like life, jazz is full of very charismatic and entertaining people, and then there's Charles Mingus. But the other thing is, the other thing that people may know is he often played the trumpet where the bell kind of stuck up at a 45-degree angle, so just very distinctive look.
Yes.
One of my favorite Dizzy Gillespie like being really funny moments, and I think it is in that documentary Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, but there's this footage of him, and I think he would do it at a lot of concerts, tell this joke. But there's this footage of him, on stage with his band. There's like a 12-piece band behind him or whatever. And it's between songs, and he's just doing banter. And he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, before we go on, I'd like to introduce the band." And usually people would think, okay, now so-and-so on trumpet, so-and-so on bass, so-and-so whatever. But he goes, "I want to introduce the band." And then he turns around and he points to the pianist, and he goes, "John, meet Dave, who's the drummer." And then they go and they introduce each other. He introduces all the band members to each other, and they all shake hands, and then they
fantastic
go on.
Dad joke.
Great dad joke. Great dad joke. I love it.
That's funny.
All right, so now we're getting into 1963, 1964. Obviously, like, music and politics very intertwined in that moment. I mean, everything is sort of intertwined with politics. But Nikki, what is your sense of kind of Dizzy's relationship with the growing civil rights movement, the larger political scene, and how does he start to then kind of move towards running for president?
Well, it certainly is the Black civil rights movement that brings him into politics and is the spark for this idea. Listeners probably remember that in August of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. helps to organize the very famous March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And it's that Gillespie points to as an inspiration for his decision to run for president. Obviously, he was well aware of the Black freedom struggle well before 1963. And in fact, there are some signs that he was campaigning as early as, like January, February of 1963. So this idea sort of trickles up as Gillespie is clowning around in a conversation with a group of musicians and activists, folks who always were hanging around together. And, they were talking about the upcoming election. And he's like, well, if they're going to have a president, why not me? I would be great in that role, right? I've organized a band. I can organize a country. And fair enough. Right?
No, I was going to say a lot of personalities.
Well, yes. And the people around him just kind of ran with it because it was funny, right? Dizzy Gillespie for president was a fun kind of gag. And it was also something that I think, that he thought could be a good time, right? Like that he could actually use for something more serious. At least it turns into something more serious as he went down the line.
Yeah. And it kind of is a merch first campaign, I would say. Like,
yes. Most of them are.
Yeah, most of them are, to be fair. Yeah, like, you need a good poster, you need a good look, but yeah.
We need to do, because we've done so many episodes before, at least a handful of episodes of like people that have run for some sort of political office as some sort of like stunt or whatever. And there's always merch. There's always like a button, a t-shirt, whatever. But like there is a list of people that have like, thrown their hat in the ring just for, not just for like a gag, but also like to amplify some sort of larger issue that they want to draw attention to, or to maybe sort of mock an opponent who they don't want to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Michael Rappaport, who was a Chippendales dancer, runs for president in 1980. So I feel like he can be classified in this this group.
Wow. Good little tidbit there. Yeah, I would say it's funny, like merch is almost like a gateway drug to like seriousness. It's like you have this idea, and then as soon as you make merch, you make a sign, you have a logo, you're like, and I find this even just in the organizing that I do in my neighborhood, or the PTA stuff, or even this teach-in that we recently did. It's like as soon as there was a poster or a logo, you're like, oh, whoa, this is real. And then you're kind of like chasing, it's sort of like a tail wagging the dog kind of thing.
Yes. We Refuse has merch, okay?
Right.
We have mugs.
And I have a lot of that merch.
Yeah. But
I would say the merch first campaign is actually a part of where you can see the seriousness underlying the joke, which is he was selling these Dizzy for President pins, but the proceeds for selling them, right? Like people are going to wear them as a gag, Dizzy for President. But the proceeds were going to groups like CORE, the Congress for Racial Equality, and these other Black civil rights groups. So it had purpose behind the merch, even if it wasn't necessarily to win the presidency.
Yeah. Yeah. Sonny Rollins, who was a contemporary of Dizzy, incredible saxophonist, but he kind of said that this, whatever you want to call it, this effort sort of perfectly encapsulated Dizzy, which was like, so Sonny Rollins said, quote, "It was a typical gag for him. It was a positive thing for Dizzy in his own mind, a joke, but not a joke. Dizzy was aware of the whole dynamic." And I think that is just so insightful. And I think, frankly, often like, people dismiss folks like Dizzy Gillespie who are willing to ham it up, willing to be entertaining, as not serious. And I think more often than not, it's like, oh no, they know exactly what they're doing. And they kind of see and they're willing to just sort of live in the, like, it's serious one moment, it's not serious another. And so that's definitely part of the dynamic here. And I think says a lot about Dizzy Gillespie himself. So he makes merch. He sort of starts talking about it at concerts. The September 1963 Monterey Jazz Festival is kind of, I would say, where the campaign is in full swing. But it really, I know Nikki wanted to beat me to that one. But it really is kind of like off and running at that point, including he starts to rework some of his songs to be campaign music.
Yeah, he has this song called Salt Peanuts, which was one of his band's famous songs. And he rewrites the lyrics to be Vote Dizzy. And I'm not going to replicate it here because it would not do it justice. But it is one of those songs, the swing era songs that are like, and bebop songs that are so fast paced. Yes. And they sort of get into your head as an earworm because there's like, vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy. That's the kind of like vibe of it. And that becomes his campaign song.
Kelly, do you know Salt Peanuts?
I do know Salt Peanuts. I will not sing it because I can.
It has the it goes Salt Peanuts is the favorite, and then he goes vote Dizzy, and the lines are your politics ought to be a groovier thing. Vote Dizzy. So get a good president who's willing to swing. Vote Dizzy.
Well, they had that with JFK.
I mean, listen, it's got the repetition. It's certainly got all the elements. And if you're at a festival and you need to collect signatures like he does to get his name on the ballot, it's a perfect way to like pass around a petition and sort of like sign here, to get his name on the ballot.
Hello, this is Matt from the Explorers Podcast. I want to invite you to join me on the voyages and journeys of the most famous explorers in the history of the world. These are the thrilling and captivating stories of Magellan, Shackleton, Lewis and Clark, and so many other famous and not so famous adventurers from throughout history. Go to explorerspodcast.com or just look us up on your podcast app. That's the Explorers Podcast.
Fall is here, and with it comes cooler nights, heartier meals, and the craving for something warm and satisfying, which is where HelloFresh comes in, bringing you comforting, chef-designed recipes and fresh seasonal ingredients right to your door. I will tell you one thing about comfort cooking in the fall. I love it, but it can be really time and labor intensive. Lots of time in the oven, soups, baking. Sometimes I want to be able to make something quick and delicious and hearty on a weeknight, and that's where HelloFresh is stepping up. They recently doubled their number of recipes, their biggest menu refresh ever, and I've been exploring a lot of the options, including the pescatarian options. HelloFresh is helping me eat more fish. The other night, I made some herby salmon with red pepper cream sauce, and it comes with couscous, and you roast up some zucchini and onions. It took just about half an hour for it all to come together, totally doable on a weeknight, but also satisfying to cook it with your hands rather than ordering food or making something out of the freezer. The best way to cook just got better. Go to hellofresh.com/thisday10fm. You'll get 10 free meals and a free item for life, 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Once again, that's hellofresh.com/thisday10fm. You'll get 10 free meals and a free item for life.
I also think it's interesting that, he's getting involved in politics, and you're right, Kelly, like having those concerts as a place to also do like voter registration is amazing. Yeah. But also like there were a ton of musicians in this period who were deeply embedded in politics. Like Frank Sinatra was close to the Kennedys. Yep. Sammy Davis Jr. for some reason was very close to Richard Nixon. Like there was this kind of blurred line in a way between politics and the music industry, that Gillespie is like living in that space.
Absolutely. And
it's very difficult to not make music political. I mean, I don't know how, even if you're doing something cheesy like Sesame Street, like it's all political. All music to me is political.
Yeah. But I really admire, and I think you guys know this, but I think more and more in this current era, I have tried to reconnect with the spirit of cheekiness and fun and subversiveness in politics. And so I really admire this kind of approach where he's just always slipping between, is this a gag or is this real? And I think that's a great way to sort of embed some of the real ideas that were behind his quote unquote run for presidency. So let's talk a little bit about kind of his platform or his policy. He does start to both on stage, but, he gives this lecture in the fall of 1963 at the University of Pacific in Stockton. And he talks about music policy issues. So he talks about kind of like foreign-born musicians coming and getting opportunities to play in the United States. He talks about how a lot of musicians are affected by alcohol and narcotics, and there's policy implications there. And then, no surprise, he talks a lot about the Vietnam War. And he talks about like kind of all of the main issues of the era. He was definitely up to speed on some of the key issues. He pushes a tax for jukebox operators, the proceeds of which would go to musicians and composers. And then he has a whole kind of slate of stuff on his platform that is, I'd say, a little cheekier and funny and quite clever. So he talks about how he would rename the White House the Blues House. He picks Phyllis Diller as his running mate. I don't know if Phyllis Diller was consulted on that, but he says Phyllis Diller is going to be his running mate.
What I think is really cool, though, is his cabinet. And in my head, I was already like, ooh, who would I put in my cabinet? He has Duke Ellington for Secretary of State. Sure. Miles Davis for Director of CIA.
Could you imagine what the CIA would get up to?
He's got a paranoid streak. It works.
He does. Max Roach for Secretary of Defense. Charles Mingus for Secretary of Peace.
That would not work.
Yeah.
Knowing Mingus quite well. No.
Was meant not to.
Ray Charles for Librarian of Congress. Okay, maybe. Louis Armstrong for Secretary of Agriculture. Not sure I got that, but okay.
It's because he grew a lot of weed, allegedly.
That might make sense. Mary Lou Williams as ambassador to the Vatican, Thelonious Monk as traveling ambassador, and this is probably my favorite choice, Malcolm X as Attorney General.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The one non-musician Malcolm X, Attorney General. Great.
Love it.
But so he lays out a proper cabinet, and he has, as we said, his platform. Obviously, civil rights, huge issue at the moment. He has this very funny quip where he says that he would appoint the governors of Mississippi and Alabama, who were sort of segregationist governors at the time. He said he would give them positions in the Congo and Vietnam as ambassadors and send them overseas. So
George Wallace would love that.
George Wallace would love that.
Yeah.
So, Nikki, can you situate this in the larger context of that election? I mean, first off, you said this didn't come up in any of your research, but do you think LBJ and Goldwater are aware of Dizzy? Is Dizzy tapping into the key issues, or is he total sideshow?
That's a great question. They were definitely aware of it. I mean, it was more of a sideshow because he wasn't considered by them to be a serious contender. But they get questions about it. Barry Goldwater it declares that his favorite trombonist is Turk Murphy, and Gillespie is like, "Whew, glad it wasn't me." It's an interesting race, though, right? Like it's a race between LBJ and Goldwater. Goldwater, as listeners may know, was seen as extremely far to the right. In fact, the group that was supporting Dizzy Gillespie called themselves the John Birx Society. John Birx was his name. But it was also making fun of the extremists who were supporting the Goldwater campaign.
John Birch Society, right? Yeah.
The John Birch Society, yes. And then, the other context for this is like the summer of 1964, in the middle of this race, is when the Civil Rights Act is passed.
Yeah.
So it is it's a really interesting time to have Gillespie running, because one of the things that we haven't talked about is that he is a black man running for president in 1963-64, which is, for all the jokiness of it, is quite radical.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think too that Gillespie is also pretty vocal about the fact that he supports Johnson for president and that he low-key abhors Goldwater. He says he'd rather burn in hell than support him.
People call that high-key abhorring.
Yeah, I know. Perhaps, yeah.
Well, he says, I never thought the time would come that I'd vote for Lyndon B, but I'd rather burn in hell than vote for Barry G. So there you go.
It's
very
not
Dizzy way of putting it.
Endorsement.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about using that platform to be able to point voters in the direction that you want them to sort of be motivated to look at, which is Johnson, and to see Goldwater as problematic. And so I think he's able to do that.
I mean, look, I have this teach-in on our mind because we just did it, but we did an episode about the first teach-ins. That was right here in the same era, right? The early 60s, 1963, I think. And, we talked a little bit about how people find their politics not always and usually in not explicitly political spaces, right? If you're kind of engaging with politics in an explicitly political space, you've probably already made up your mind. But if one of your favorite musicians is out there being funny, being charismatic, but also talking about ending the war in Vietnam or diplomatic recognition of China, or the fact that there are real policy implications to the fact that so many musicians suffer from alcohol and drug abuse and poverty, then maybe that is your entry into what would obviously become a much more politically engaged and radicalized decade.
This is something I think a lot about too, Jody. Even on the heels of the No King protest, they've come in for a lot of criticism for not having clear demands, maybe not being strong organizational spaces. And I take all of that. At the same time, people come into politics the way they come into politics. And if that is through a kind of jokey campaign, if that is through the No Kings marches, if that is through, if it's through anything, if the thing that we talked recently about, the chemicals that were poisoning that small county in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that raised the political participation of the people in that town for a generation. And so there is something, people debate this a lot. Is it making politics seem less serious? Is it not doing politics right? And those are fair discussions to have, but we should be creating as many on-ramps as possible for people to get involved in the decisions that structure their lives.
I mean, when you think about the fact that Zelensky was a comedian And now he's president. Al Franken was a comedian, and he became, a senator? Listen.
For a while.
Trump
Any other
was
television personnel?
reality
Yes.
TV show on The Apprentice. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually not that much of a stretch. Or at least we've given a little bit more credence to people when they do make runs, because when you have a platform, whether it's music or comedy or any other sort of like highly visible job, it's an on-ramp in some ways to get people to think a little bit further beyond whatever your talent is into something else.
And, not to read too much into the kind of bigger picture implications of all this, but it does make me think about something I think about a lot, which is the kind of difference between campaigning and governing. And I would say, in many ways, Trump and the modern GOP kind of recognize that like everything can be campaigning, and you can turn everything into just a media strategy in the sort of latest news cycle. And that is problematic, but I also think
has some downsides.
There's some
Yes.
downsides,
Yes.
but I do think it is interesting to see that Dizzy kind of like picked up on that, that the modern campaign can be that way. So yeah. All right. Well, I am really glad we got to this. There is a whole album called Dizzy for President that is really just a live concert, but it is actually one of the best live concerts of from in his catalog. So we'll link to that in the newsletter, and we're going to play a little bit of the Salt Peanuts version. By the way, if you go down the Salt Peanuts rabbit hole, Dizzy did play in the Carter White House many years later and got Jimmy Carter, of course, peanut farmer, to sing Salt Peanuts with him.
I love it.
And it's on YouTube, and it is wonderful to hear Jimmy Carter sing Salt Peanuts. But we will play the Vote Dizzy version as we go out here. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kelly Carter Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
Willing to run.
Vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy.
You want to make government a barrel of fun.
Vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy.
You want to make politics a groove of your thing.
Vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy.
You get a good president who really can swing. So the republic where it is. Vote for a Democratic is. You want a good president who's willing to run.
Vote Dizzy, vote Dizzy.
You want to make government a barrel of fun. You want to spend your money in a groove of your way every cent. Get that bad for the people's only candidate. Dizzy for president.
This Day is a proud member of Radiotopia, a network of independent, artist-produced podcasts. Don't forget to sign up for our America250 Watch newsletter. Every Thursday, members get exclusive access to analysis and information about the upcoming semi-quincentennial, commentary from our team, and a list of fascinating things that happened that week throughout history. Join in, find out lots more at thisdaypod.com. You can also follow This Day Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Jacob Feldman is our researcher. Brittany Brown is our editor. My name is Jody Avirgan. See you soon.
Radiotopia.